Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. Today was a really fun day for me because I got to go to my first Bucks game in 14 months. Usually my dad and I are people who like to go to 5 or 6 Bucks games per season, and in addition, we usually attend a playoff game as well. But because of the global pandemic that has swept the world over the past year and a half, we have not been able to go to a game in a really long time. But my birthday is coming up on Wednesday, and my dad decided that he wanted to take me to a game for my present. And even though the Bucks lost, this was a really incredible game, and I can't wait to talk about it. So let's talk about, obviously, what was a pretty disappointing ending. I think that the refs really blew this game for the Bucks, as the phantom foul on PJ Tucker on Devin Booker's last second shot at the end of overtime was just mind-blowing. Tucker clearly did not touch Booker, and that was not a foul at all. They went and they reviewed it, and to me, it looked like Booker didn't get the shot off before time expired, and so I thought that maybe they could have overturned it and we would have gone into double overtime. But I guess they called it that Tucker fouled Booker as he was on his way up. So D-Book still got to the line, and he made 1 out of 2 free throws as he missed the second intentionally, probably. And the Phoenix Suns beat the Bucks by a final score of 128 to 127. But this was still a great game. It went into overtime, and we saw some Bucks players really step it up and make some huge plays. And unfortunately, they had to make those plays because Giannis went out with an injury right at the beginning of overtime. After the game, we found out that it was just cramps and it wasn't anything serious. The only reason why Giannis didn't re-enter the game and finish it out for the Bucks was because he had a recent injury to his knee, and Coach Mike Budenholzer didn't think it would be appropriate to let Giannis finish out the game after he cramped up. But the Bucks had some other players, some players on the periphery, really step up and make some huge plays for them. That obviously starts with Chris Middleton, who hit some huge shots in the overtime period. He made 1 off-balance 2-pointer and 1 really tough 3-pointer with about 25 seconds left that should have been the game-tying shot that sent this into double overtime. It was after a timeout. Coach Mike Budenholzer drew up a play for Middleton to take a shot off of movement at the top of the key. Middleton was slightly off balance, he had a hand in his face, and it didn't matter. Chris knocked that down. Middleton had a really solid game that was boosted by his play in that overtime, as Chris finished with 26 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists on 10 for 22 shooting. I really liked what I saw from Chris, and I hope that those shots that he hit in overtime can help him regain some confidence, because as my dad was quick to point out today, it just didn't seem like Chris was playing with the same confidence we've seen in the past, and a large part of that can probably be given to the fact that he's been in a bit of a slump and he hasn't been hitting shots as efficiently as he usually does. So I'm just hoping that this can get him back on a roll. And speaking of getting on a roll, Giannis was so good in this game in the first half. He had 21 points in the first half, and he continued to finish with 33 points and grabbing 8 rebounds while shooting 12 for 22 from the field and 9 for 10 from the free throw line. The Suns really didn't have a great option to guard Giannis, as DeAndre Ayton did what he could and actually did a pretty solid job of guarding Antetokounmpo. Giannis was able to get Ayton into some foul trouble, as Ayton had 4 fouls pretty early on in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't too big of an issue from there on out. But outside of Ayton, whenever DeAndre was off the court, the Suns really struggled to find an answer. Jay Crowder was the primary guy they put on Giannis, but every single time Giannis had that matchup, he took Crowder into the post, got a little face-up action on him, and easily took the ball to the basket. Giannis was really good, and I just wish he hadn't gotten injured, because I think that was a huge swing in that overtime period. Not as big of a swing as the officiating, as both the call on Tucker on the foul on Booker and the charge call, the block call that was given to Dante DiVincenzo, when I thought it was pretty clearly a charge on DeAndre Ayton, really threw this game in the Suns' favor as well. But what can you do? I just think that it was great that the Bucks came out and gave the great effort that they did, and I think that it was great that the Bucks role players stepped up when they did. As I talked about, DiVincenzo took that huge charge, and there was another play late in the fourth quarter where DeAndre Ayton was rolling to the basket, and it looked like he had a pretty clear lane, but Dante stepped up, got physical with him and forced him to kick the ball back out to the three-point line. DiVincenzo making those big plays on defense are enough at times to offset what can be some lackluster offensive production, and I really liked what I saw from DiVincenzo in this game, particularly on defense. He did chip in 9 points and 7 rebounds in terms of regular counting stats, but as a off the ball help defender, I think Dante did a great job, and he also was a key piece in the defense that was played on Devin Booker on that final play, as there was a lot of screening action between Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and Mikal Bridges, and Dante DiVincenzo, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton did a terrific job of flawlessly switching all of those actions and making sure that Booker was going to be forced to take the difficult shot that he ended up being forced to take. Holiday in particular did a really nice job on Booker as he was able to push Devin all the way out to the three-point line before Booker cut back towards the rim. And I thought that Drew did a really nice job overall in this game in guarding both Devin Booker and Chris Paul. Well, Holiday also was quite good offensively, finishing with 25 points and 8 assists on 10 for 19 shooting, but I think his impact was felt most on defense. He picked up a couple steals in this game that allowed the Bucks to get some easy runouts, but overall, I just think that he played some really solid D on Booker, who finished with 24 points, but it took him 24 shots to get there, and Paul, who once again finished with 22 points, but he had to shoot 20 shots to get there. Chris Paul and Devin Booker are great players. They're top 20 players in the NBA, and they are going to get their points. It's all a matter of how inefficiently you can make them get those points. And I think that the Bucks, with Holiday in particular, did a great job in forcing those two guys to take some really difficult shots. Chris Middleton and Dante DiVincenzo also deserve a lot of credit for the defense that they played on the two-star Suns guards, but overall, I just think that the Bucks played pretty well in this game. Mikal Bridges did make them pay from 3. Bridges hit some real daggers in this game, including one in overtime that gave the Suns a 3-point lead. Chris Middleton did come back down and knock down a 3 to even it out, but Bridges was quite good in this game, finishing with 21 points on 8 for 11 shooting and 5 for 7 from beyond the 3-point line. Bridges is also a good defensive player, and at times I thought that he was effective on Chris Middleton, but as a whole, I didn't think that he was as good on defense as a lot of people have made him out to be. I think he's a really good help defender, don't get me wrong, but in terms of an on-the-ball stopper, I don't think that he's necessarily at the same level as some players, and potentially even his teammate Jay Crowder, who I think was probably the best weapon defensively that the Suns had to put on Middleton. DeAndre Ayton was the 4th and final 20-point scorer in this game for the Phoenix Suns, although they did have some other bench players really step up. Cam Payne had 12 points and 5 for 9 shooting and was a really key piece of a third quarter string by the Suns that kept them in the game. I think Payne probably had 3 or 4 straight buckets, and if not for that, there's a chance that this game gets a little out of control for Phoenix and the Bucks end up winning in a bit of a blowout. Cam Johnson also stepped up by pouring in 13 points on 3 for 6 3-point shooting, but getting back to Ayton, DeAndre had 20 points and 13 rebounds on 8 for 11 shooting, but he didn't necessarily score in the way that you would expect someone who's 7'2", 250 pounds like Ayton to do so. Ayton does much more scoring with the mid-range jumper, as he's really effective as a face-up post player, and he has such a high point of release on his jump shot that he's able to shoot it over tall players like Brook Lopez. I do think that he could be a bit more effective if he had a low post game and could really hammer the ball in there like someone like Joel Embiid does, but Ayton was still really effective. I think that the next step in his game is certainly taking the ball further in the post, and that's something that I've noticed quite a bit whenever I've watched the Suns this year. But you can't complain about a 20-point, 13-rebound effort in which he played pretty solid defense on Giannis Antetokounmpo. Getting back to the Bucks role players a little bit, I do want to touch on Pat Connaughton and PJ Tucker, as each of those two players made some really big, or I guess one really big shot in the overtime period. The Bucks fell behind 6 points, and Giannis left with the cramp. And from there, it looked bleak. It looked like the Bucks were maybe not going to be able to keep this one real close. But from there, Pat Connaughton made a huge corner three-pointer. It was his third 3 of the night, as Pat finished with 9 points on 3 for 4 3-point shooting. But that was a big shot from Pat, and it was good to see him knock that down with confidence. He also had a really good game defensively as a help defender, and he also grabbed 9 rebounds. So overall, a nice game from Pat, and I really think he helped the Bucks hang around in this game. PJ Tucker also made a huge three-pointer in the overtime period as he found himself wide open in the corner in a bit of a scramble situation, and he caught it in the corner, and you know, PJ Tucker, he's a corner three-pointer specialist. He rose up and he knocked that down easily. The Bucks really played well in this game, and I was super happy with the way they played. I loved watching them play tonight, and I think there's a lot of really positive takeaways. Unfortunately, because of some outside circumstances like the officiating and Giannis's injury, they weren't able to come away with the win, but I don't think that there's too much to complain about with if you are a Bucks fan, especially compared to Saturday night's loss to the Grizzlies. This was a fun game. I'm really happy I got to go, and I hope that I can go to another game this year because they're so much fun, and I just love the Bucks, as I'm sure you all can tell. Let me know what you thought of this game in the comments section down below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.